You've been trained to think boring is bad. That's not an accident, because the people who actually run this economy, the ones quietly buying up laundromats, vending machine routes, and storage units, they need you distracted. They need you chasing the sexy stuff. Crypto pumps, dropshipping funnels, the next disruptive app that's going to make you rich by Tuesday. Meanwhile, some guy in Ohio you've never heard of owns 40 coin-operated car washes and pulls in more passive income than most YouTubers with 1 million subscribers. Here's the part that should make you angry. This isn't a secret. It's public information. Anyone can buy a laundromat. Anyone can start a vending route. But nobody tells you because boring doesn't get clicks, and boring doesn't sell courses. For the next 25 minutes, I'm giving you 20 of these businesses, the exact math, the exact startup cost, the exact monthly cash flow, because once you see the numbers, you'll understand why the wealthy have been quietly buying boring for the last 50 years while you were told to follow your passion. Here's the lie you were sold. Somebody told you that wealth comes from innovation, from disruption, from building the next app, the next brand, the next thing nobody's ever seen before. And look, sometimes that's true. But for every Elon Musk, there are 10,000 boring millionaires you've never heard of. And they didn't get there by inventing anything. They got there by buying ownership of things that already work. Think about it this way. A vending machine has existed since the 1880s. A laundromat is not a new idea. A car wash is not disruptive. None of these things are innovative, and that's exactly the point, because innovation is risky, and risk is what kills most people's finances. The lie isn't that you need a great idea. The lie is that boring can't make you rich. And that lie serves a very specific purpose. It keeps you chasing lottery ticket outcomes instead of buying boring, proven, cash-flowing systems that have worked for 100 years and will keep working for 100 more. And here's the number that should actually bother you. Every year, a fresh wave of people pours their savings into ventures with a statistical failure rate north of 80% within 5 years, chasing the fantasy of the unicorn exit, while a much smaller, much quieter group buys assets with failure rates under 10%. Because the demand was never in question to begin with. People have always needed clean clothes, cold storage, hauled trash, and cash from a machine on a Friday night. That gap in risk, repeated across thousands of buyers every year, is the actual wealth transfer nobody talks about on this platform. The uncomfortable truth is this. Most people who got rich in the last 2 decades in America didn't do it through a startup. They did it through unsexy, unglamorous, cash flow positive small businesses that spit out predictable income month after month. Laundromats, vending routes, self-storage, car washes, vacation rental arbitrage, ATM routes. These businesses don't need you to be a genius. They need you to understand math and to be willing to do something your ego doesn't want to do. Own something boring. Real quick, because I don't do this twice. If you're serious about building income that doesn't depend on your boss, your energy, or your mood, hit subscribe now, because next week I'm breaking down the exact financing structures banks use to fund these acquisitions, and you don't want to miss it. All right, let's get into the list. 1. Operated laundromats. Let's start with the classic, because it's the clearest example of boring beating exciting. A standard laundromat in a mid-sized American market costs somewhere between $150,000 and $400,000 to acquire, depending on machine count, lease terms, and location. Let's use a real scenario. You buy a 20-machine laundromat for $250,000, you put 20% down, $50,000, and finance the rest through an SBA loan at roughly 10% interest over 10 years. Your monthly loan payment lands around $2,600. Now the revenue side. A well-located 20-machine laundromat running at moderate utilization generates somewhere between $12,000 and $18,000 a month in gross revenue. Let's be conservative and say $14,000. Your operating expenses, rent, water, gas, electricity, minor repairs, and an attendant working part-time typically eat about 50% of that. So you're left with roughly $7,000 in monthly operating profit. Subtract your loan payment of $2,600 and you're clearing around $4,400 a month in pure cash flow on a business you visit maybe 5 hours a week. Here's the psychological root cause of why almost nobody does this. Laundromats feel dirty. They feel low status. Your brain associates them with people who can't afford a washing machine. And it quietly whispers that owning one says something about you. That's status bias talking, not financial logic. The wealthiest laundromat owners I've studied don't care what it looks like from the outside. They care that the machines run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without needing a single sales call, without needing a single client meeting, without needing your personality to close a deal. The non-obvious execution rule here: don't buy a laundromat based on the seller's numbers. Sellers inflate revenue constantly by estimating cash transactions that never got reported. Instead, pull the actual water and gas utility bills for the past 12 months. Water usage tells you almost exactly how many wash cycles ran, because each cycle uses a predictable amount of water per machine model. If the seller's claimed revenue doesn't match what the water usage supports, walk away. That single trick saves buyers from at least half of the bad laundromat deals on the market. 2. Vending machine routes. Vending is the purest version of this whole philosophy. Low touch, high frequency, boring as concrete. A single decent vending machine placed in a location with real foot traffic. A warehouse, a gym, an office complex can generate between $300 and $800 a month in profit, depending on product markup and location quality. The real money isn't in one machine, it's in the route. Here's the math on building a 15 machine route. Machines cost between $2,000 and $3,500 each if you buy modern, card reader enabled units instead of old coin-only relics. 15 machines at an average of $2,800 puts your total equipment cost around $42,000. Add in initial product stocking about $3,000, and you're looking at roughly $45,000 to launch the whole route. If each machine nets you an average of $450 a month in profit after product costs, 15 machines generate $6,750 a month. That's an 18-month payback period on your entire investment. And after that, it's close to pure profit minus restocking labor. The psychological trap that keeps people out of vending is boredom aversion. Your brain is wired to seek stimulation, and restocking a vending machine at 6 in the morning feels like the opposite of stimulating. It feels beneath you. But wealth building and stimulation are almost never the same activity. The people quietly running 40 machine vending empires aren't more intelligent than you. They simply made peace with doing something unglamorous on a consistent schedule. The execution rule that actually matters: never place a machine on a handshake deal. Always get a signed location agreement with a minimum 18-month term, because the single biggest killer of vending route profitability is losing a great location 6 months after you've stocked it, right when it finally started performing. Locations take 3 to 4 months to hit their real sales velocity as regular customers develop the habit of using the machine. Lose that location early, and you've eaten the ramp-up cost for someone else's future machine. 3. Self-storage unit ownership. Self-storage might be the most mathematically forgiving business on this entire list, because human psychology guarantees demand. People are pathologically bad at getting rid of things they don't need, and that flaw is your revenue stream. A small self-storage facility, say 50 units in a secondary market, might cost somewhere around $500,000 to $800,000 to acquire, which sounds intimidating until you look at the financing structure. Commercial lenders love self-storage because default rates are historically among the lowest of any commercial real estate category. People will stop paying their car loan before they'll let a stranger sell off grandma's furniture in a storage auction. Let's run a scenario on a 50-unit facility purchased for $600,000, 25% down, so $150,000 out of pocket, financed at around 7% over 25 years. Your monthly payment lands close to $3,200. At 90% occupancy with an average unit rent of $110 a month, you're generating close to $4,900 in gross monthly revenue. Operating expenses for self-storage are shockingly low compared to other real estate. No tenants trashing units, minimal maintenance, often no on-site staff required, typically running 25 to 30% of revenue. After expenses of roughly $1,400 and your loan payment of $3,200, you're clearing around $300 a month in year one, which sounds unimpressive until you realize you're also building equity and benefiting from rent increases that self-storage facilities implement almost annually without pushback. Because moving stored belongings is a massive hassle nobody wants to deal with over a $10 rent hike. The psychological root cause behind self-storage demand is loss aversion combined with decision paralysis. People would rather pay indefinitely to store an item than make the emotionally difficult decision to throw it away or sell it. That's not a bug in human behavior. It's a permanent feature, and it's why storage facility occupancy rates have stayed remarkably stable even during recessions. The execution rule that separates profitable storage owners from broke ones: implement automated rent increases through a property management system from day one, structured as small, frequent increases rather than large annual jumps. A $12 increase feels negligible to a tenant. A $144 annual jump delivered all at once triggers cancellations. Same total revenue, radically different retention outcome. 4. Automated car washes. Here's a business model banks are aggressively lending against right now, because it removes the single biggest cost center in most service businesses: labor. A modern automated express car wash, the kind with the tunnel system and monthly membership model, costs between $1.2 million and $2.5 million to build from the ground up, which is why most people entering this space buy an existing operation instead. Let's look at an acquisition scenario. A single location express wash purchased for $1.4 million, 20% down at $280,000, financed over 15 years around 8%, landing your monthly payment near $11,000. The revenue engine here is the membership model, and this is where the math gets genuinely aggressive. If that location signs up 1,200 members at $25 a month, that's $30,000 in pure recurring monthly revenue before a single drive-through customer even shows up. Add drive-through traffic of roughly $18,000 a month, and you're at $48,000 gross monthly revenue. Operating costs, water reclamation systems, electricity, minimal staffing, since most of these locations run with 1 or 2 attendants, insurance, and chemical supplies, typically consume about 40% of revenue, leaving roughly $28,800 in operating profit. Subtract the $11,000 loan payment, and you're clearing close to $17,800 a month on a business that runs almost entirely on automation. The psychological root cause blocking people from this space is capital intimidation. The number looks enormous, so people mentally disqualify themselves before checking whether the cash flow actually supports the debt. But that's backwards logic. What matters isn't how large the number looks. What matters is whether the monthly cash flow comfortably services the monthly debt with margin left over. This deal clears the loan payment by more than 2.5 times, which is exactly the kind of coverage ratio that gets banks excited to lend more. The non-obvious execution rule, the membership model, not the drive-through traffic, is the entire value of the business. When evaluating any car wash acquisition, ignore the seller's claimed total revenue and ask specifically what percentage comes from recurring memberships versus one-time visits. A wash doing 60% membership revenue is a fundamentally more valuable, more stable asset than one doing 60% walk-up traffic, even if their total revenue numbers look identical on paper. 5. ATM Machine Routes. This is the closest thing to owning a tiny, boring bank branch, and the math on it is almost embarrassingly simple. A single ATM placed in a bar, a gas station, or a convenience store costs between $2,000 and $4,000 to purchase outright. Let's say you build a route of 10 machines at an average cost of $3,200 each, putting your total investment around $32,000. Here's how ATM economics actually work. You set a surcharge fee, typically between $2.50 and $3.50 per withdrawal. If a machine processes an average of 150 withdrawals a month, which is realistic for a moderately trafficked bar or gas station at $3 a withdrawal, that's $450 in gross monthly revenue per machine. Across 10 machines, that's $4,500 a month in gross revenue. Your only real ongoing costs are cash loading logistics, either your own time driving the route or a cash-in-transit service fee, plus minimal maintenance and processing fees, which together typically run around 20% of revenue. That leaves roughly $3,600 a month in profit against a $32,000 initial investment, meaning the entire route pays for itself in under 9 months. The psychological trap here is liquidity anxiety. People assume owning ATMs means constantly worrying about cash running dry or, worse, getting robbed. In reality, most modern ATM operators use cash-in-transit armored services or partner banks that handle the physical logistics for a small percentage cut, meaning the owner never personally touches large sums of cash. The fear is outdated. It belongs to an era before professional cash logistics services existed at small operator scale. The execution rule that determines success or failure: never place an ATM purely based on foot traffic count. Place it based on cash-carrying behavior. A high-traffic clothing store where everyone pays by card is a terrible ATM location. A moderate traffic bar, a laundromat, or a cash-heavy flea market stall with the same foot traffic will out-earn it 3-to-1. Because the withdrawal rate depends on how likely that specific crowd is to need physical cash in that specific moment. 6. Dumpster rental and roll-off services. Nobody dreams of owning a dumpster company, and that's precisely why it's profitable. Almost zero competition from ambitious entrepreneurs, because ambition and dumpsters don't culturally belong in the same sentence. A single roll-off dumpster costs between $3,000 and $6,000 new, or roughly half that used. Let's model a startup fleet of 8 dumpsters at an average cost of $4,000 each, totaling $32,000, plus a used pickup and hauling trailer around $15,000, bringing total startup capital to $47,000. Each dumpster rental typically generates between $350 and $550 per rental cycle, which usually runs 7 to 10 days for construction and renovation debris. With 8 dumpsters cycling reasonably well, you can realistically turn each one 2 to 3 times a month. At an average rental price of $450 and 2.5 turns per dumpster per month, that's $1,125 per dumpster monthly, times 8 dumpsters, landing at $9,000 gross monthly revenue. Fuel dump fees and truck maintenance typically consume around 35% of that, leaving close to $5,850 a month in profit. A business that recoups its entire startup cost in roughly 8 months. The behavioral root cause behind the lack of competition is disgust. Sensitivity combined with status aversion, the same force keeping people out of laundromats, just intensified. Nobody wants to explain at a dinner party that they own a dumpster company. But disgust sensitivity is not a financial metric. It's an emotional one. And every entrepreneur who's built real wealth in unglamorous industries has had to consciously separate the two. The non-obvious execution rule: price your rentals based on local dump fee tiers, not competitor pricing. Most operators just copy whatever the guy down the road charges. But dump fees vary wildly by material type. Clean concrete costs less to dump than mixed construction debris, and operators who build tiered pricing based on actual disposal cost per material type consistently outperform flat-rate competitors by capturing more margin on the loads that cost less to process. 7. Vacation rental arbitrage, rental on rental. This one deserves special attention because it lets you enter real estate cash flow without owning real estate, which fixes the single biggest barrier: capital. Here's how it works mathematically. You lease a 3-bedroom house for $2,200 a month on a long-term lease. Get the landlord's written permission to sublease it as a short-term rental. Furnish it for roughly $8,000 and list it on short-term platforms. If that property books at an average nightly rate of $190 with 65% occupancy, that's roughly 19 nights booked a month at $190, generating $3,610 in gross monthly revenue. Subtract your base rent of $2,200, utilities and cleaning fees around $600, and platform commissions around $360, and you're clearing roughly $450 a month per unit after your furniture investment is recouped, which typically happens within the first 3 to 4 months of operation. The real wealth comes from scaling this model across multiple units simultaneously, since each additional property requires no new capital beyond furnishing, only your time to manage bookings, which itself gets automated through dynamic pricing software and remote cleaning teams. Operators running 8 to 12 arbitrage units commonly clear between $4,000 and $7,000 a month in combined cash flow without owning a single deed. The psychological root cause keeping people out of this model is permission-seeking anxiety, the fear of approaching a landlord and asking for something unconventional. Most people assume the answer will be no and never ask. In reality, landlords are frequently persuaded by the offer of guaranteed on-time rent, professional furnishing that improves their property, and detailed proof of short-term rental insurance covering potential damage because it de-risks their asset while increasing perceived property value. The execution rule that determines profitability: never sign a lease in a market before checking the specific short-term rental regulations for that city block, not just the city. Many cities have zone-specific short-term rental bans that don't appear in a general search, and operators who skip this step frequently find themselves furnished, staffed, and legally blocked from operating within their first 90 days. 8. Pressure washing and exterior cleaning franchises. This is the lowest capital entry point on the entire list, and the scalability math is what makes it dangerous in the best possible sense. A commercial-grade pressure washer trailer and water tank setup costs between $6,000 and $10,000 to start. A single residential driveway or house wash job typically prices between $250 and $600 depending on square footage, and a skilled operator can complete 2 to 3 jobs per day at an average job price of $375, and 2 jobs per day, 5 days a week. That's $3,750 a week, or roughly $15,000 a month in gross revenue for a single operator. Fuel, chemicals, and equipment maintenance run around 15% of that, leaving close to $12,750 a month in profit for one person running one machine. And this is before hiring a second crew, which is where this business transitions from a job into an actual company. A second crew, paid a flat rate of $600 a week plus fuel reimbursement, can generate an additional $10,000 a month in gross revenue while you never touch the equipment yourself. The psychological root cause behind underpricing in this industry is comparison anxiety. New operators see competitors charging low prices and assume they must match them without realizing most of those competitors are operating at a loss and won't survive 18 months. The execution rule that protects margin: price commercial contracts like restaurant grease trap areas and gas station lots at a fixed monthly recurring rate rather than per job. Because recurring commercial contracts create the exact kind of predictable, boring, unglamorous cash flow this entire video is about. 9. Car title and equipment leasing to small operators. The final wealth mechanism worth understanding is capital leasing, buying equipment outright and leasing it to smaller operators who lack the capital to buy their own. If you purchase a used box truck for $18,000 and lease it to a delivery contractor for $1,100 a month, after insurance and maintenance reserves of roughly $200 a month, you're clearing $900 a month in pure passive income, recouping your entire investment in about 20 months, after which the truck itself becomes appreciating optionality, either continued lease income or resale. The root psychological barrier here is trust aversion, the fear of handing a valuable asset to someone else and losing control of it. That fear is solved entirely through structure, not personality. A properly drafted lease agreement with a GPS tracker, a security deposit equal to 1 month's payment, and automatic payment collection removes the need to trust anyone. The execution rule: always lease to operators who already have an existing contract or client relationship, never to someone starting from zero. Because you're not funding an idea, you're funding proven, already flowing revenue that simply lacks its own equipment. I've given you 9 with full math because those 9 are where I'd personally put money first. But the list was 20, and I'm not skipping the rest because some of these fit certain starting capital levels better than the ones above. 10. Mobile home lot rentals. You don't own the home, you own the dirt underneath it. Tenant owns the trailer, pays you $200 to $400 a month in lot rent, and you're never fixing a leaking roof at midnight because it isn't your roof. 11. Billboard and static ad space leasing. A single well-placed billboard on a rented plot of highway-adjacent land can lease for $800 to $2,500 a month to local advertisers, with almost zero ongoing maintenance beyond swapping a vinyl print twice a year. 12. Commercial cleaning contracts. Office buildings need their floors mopped every night, whether the economy booms or crashes. A single mid-size contract pays $1,500 to $4,000 a month. And once you have 4 contracts, you hire a crew and stop cleaning yourself entirely. 13. Coin-operated air and vacuum stations at gas stations. Almost nobody thinks about who owns these. A route of 10 stations at roughly $150 a month each in quarters generates $1,500 monthly for essentially zero labor, beyond a monthly coin collection run. 14. Portable toilet rentals for construction sites. Disgusting, yes. Also recession-resistant because construction sites need bathrooms regardless of what the stock market is doing. A fleet of 20 units rents for around $150 a month each, generating $3,000 in gross monthly revenue against minimal upkeep. 15. Bounce house and party equipment rental, weekend-only demand, but at $150 to $300 per rental and near zero cost per use beyond cleaning. A 5-unit inventory run purely on weekends can clear $1,500 a month for roughly 8 hours of actual labor. 16. Vending-style claw machines and arcade cabinets placed in restaurants. These split revenue with the venue, typically 60-40 in your favor, and a route of 12 machines in family restaurants can generate close to $2,200 a month combined. 17. Car detailing subscription boxes for local dealerships. Dealerships need every car on the lot detailed constantly to maintain resale appeal. A recurring monthly contract with 3 mid-sized dealerships can pay $4,000 a month combined, billed automatically with a 2-person crew doing the actual work. 18. Document shredding and secure disposal routes. Businesses are legally required to destroy sensitive paperwork. A commercial shredding route with 15 small business clients paying $80 a month each generates $1,200 in pure recurring revenue for 1 truck and 1 afternoon a week. 19. Laundry pickup and delivery for busy households, run on a subscription model rather than a storefront. No real estate required. 100 subscribers paying $60 a month generates $6,000 monthly, with the actual washing outsourced to an existing laundromat you pay wholesale rates to use during off-peak hours. 20. Ice vending machines. Popular in warmer climates, these dispense bagged ice 24 hours a day with zero staffing. A single machine in a high-traffic gas station lot can generate $600 to $1,500 a month in pure margin, since the product cost is close to nothing but water and electricity. That's the full 20. Different capital levels, different risk tolerances, same underlying principle running through every single one. Boring, predictable, unsexy demand that never goes away. Owned by people who stopped needing their business to sound impressive at a dinner party. Here's the harsh reality nobody wants to say out loud. None of these businesses will make you rich by next month. If you came here for that, you've misunderstood the entire point of this video. What these 20 categories have in common isn't speed. It's mathematical certainty. Predictable demand, predictable margins, boring, repeatable cash flow that doesn't depend on virality, doesn't depend on a platform algorithm, and doesn't depend on you being charismatic. So here's what you actually do tomorrow morning. Step 1. Pick 1 category from this list, not 3, not 5. 1. Diversifying before you've mastered a single cash flow mechanism is how people burn capital learning 5 lessons badly instead of 1 lesson well. Step 2. Call an SBA preferred lender in your area and ask specifically what debt service coverage ratio they require for that category of acquisition. This single phone call tells you exactly how big a deal you can realistically finance before you waste time chasing something outside your reach. Step 3. Find 3 existing operators in that category within 100 miles of you and study their locations in person, not online. Watch their actual customer volume for 2 hours at different times of day. Numbers on a listing lie. Foot traffic in real time doesn't. Step 4. Build a simple 1-page cash flow model using the math structures I just walked you through for your chosen category. And stress test it at 70% of projected revenue, because the businesses that survive are the ones bought with margin for error already built in, not the ones bought assuming everything goes perfectly. That's it. That's the whole plan. Not glamorous, not exciting, which if you've been paying attention for the last 20 minutes is exactly the point. One more thing, because I don't want you walking away from this in October of 2026 with a spreadsheet and no action. Set a hard deadline on step 1. Give yourself 14 days to make that first lender call. Not 14 days to think about it. 14 days to physically pick up the phone. The businesses on this list have existed for decades and will still exist next year. The only variable that actually changes your outcome is whether you move while the math is fresh in your head or let it evaporate the moment a notification pulls your attention somewhere else. And understand something about the debt in these deals, because this is where most beginners freeze. Every example I walked you through today used leverage, borrowed capital to acquire a cash-flowing asset. That's not reckless when the underlying revenue is stable and proven. It's reckless when the underlying revenue is speculative. A laundromat with 12 months of verified utility-backed revenue is not a gamble. A meme coin is a gamble. The debt isn't the risky part. The asset quality underneath the debt is the risky part. And every calculation in this video assumed conservative, verifiable numbers, not best-case fantasy projections. If you only take one number away from this entire video, take this one. A $450 monthly cash flow on 1 vending machine looks small. 10 of those machines is $4,500 a month. 20 is $9,000. That's not a side hustle anymore. That's a second income replacing what most people earn at a full-time job. built entirely from a business too boring for anyone else to bother copying you. And don't skip the health and relationship cost of getting this wrong, because it's real even if this video is 90% about the money. Every operator I've studied who scaled past 3 or 4 of these units at once had one thing in common. They protected a fixed block of time each week that had nothing to do with the business, usually early mornings for physical movement, because managing 4 cash-flowing assets while running on no sleep and no exercise is how good operators make sloppy, expensive decisions. And every one of them had a single person in their life who knew the real numbers, not the impressive-sounding version, a spouse, a business partner, a close friend, because building this alone in total secrecy is a fast path to burning out right when the second or third deal finally starts to compound. Now, everything I just walked you through assumes you can actually get approved for financing, and that's where most people get stuck. Not because their business math is bad, but because their personal financial profile is a mess before they ever walk into that lender's office. I broke down exactly how to fix that, step by step, in the video right here, where I cover the 4 numbers every bank checks before they'll fund an acquisition like the ones we just discussed. Watch that next, because the businesses in this video only work if you can actually get the capital to buy them, and by the time you finish that video, you'll have both halves of this equation, what to buy and how to actually get funded to buy it.